So, welcome to our brand new lecture series called Daily MCQ Practice, in which we cover that day's important news events through a set of MCQs. So, through this lecture series, every day we'll cover 4 to 5 MCQs from current affairs. If you follow this lecture series regularly, if you make it a part of your daily routine, then within 1 month's time, you'll be covering 100 to 150 MCQs just from current affairs. And in 1 year, if you take on this habit for one whole year, then you'll be covering around 1200 MCQs. 1200 MCQs from current affairs itself. Now, needless to say, you can ask any serious UPSC aspirant or any UPSC aspirant who has cleared prelims examination that 1200 MCQs from current affairs are more than sufficient. And very important because current affairs forms a significant chunk of your UPSC prelims examination. Alright, so if you're serious about your UPSC prelims examination next year, make this lecture series a part of your daily routine. Now, today we are going to discuss newspaper or MCQs from newspaper of 28th June 2024. So without any further explanation, let's start with question number 1. All right. Consider the following statements regarding motion of thanks. It allows each House of Parliament to discuss the contents of President's address. President's address is a constitutionally mandated procedure. Defeat of motion of thanks in Rajya Sabha might lead to dismissal of the government. Select the correct option from below. Now look, as per Article 87 of our Constitution, during the first session of Parliament, every year or after every general election, and every year, during the first parliamentary session, President is bound to give an address. And in that address, President actually outlines the agenda of the government. What government is planning to do, what are its objectives, aims, responsibilities, everything. So that is discussed or that is spoken of in the President's address, and this is a constitutional duty of the President as per Article 87. Now, after President's address, mind you, one more thing. In Article 87, it is written that the President's address shall be to the joint session of Parliament. That means Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha are sitting together. Alright? Now, after President's address, the contents of his speech are discussed in each House of Parliament. But that discussion will take place only after a motion of thanks is moved in each House of Parliament. Okay? So motion of thanks allows each House of Parliament to discuss the contents of President's address. Absolutely correct. President's address is a constitutionally mandated procedure. Absolutely, as per Article 87. Defeat of motion of thanks in Rajya Sabha might lead to the dismissal of the government. Now, look, after the discussion, contents of the speech of President, well, motion of thanks is put to vote. That discussion is put to vote. Okay? Now, basically, that discussion is all about the government's agenda. Now, generally, government is in majority in Lok Sabha, so generally this motion of thanks, when it is put to vote, it gets passed. Okay? But if the government is unable to pass this through voting in Lok Sabha, then that means government does not have the required numbers to run that house or required numbers to form the government. That might lead to the dismissal of the government. Not automatically, but it would actually insinuate or it would actually reveal to the opposition members that they can move no confidence motion and defeat the government. Okay, so if motion of thanks is defeated in Lok Sabha, well, then that might trigger a chain of events that would eventually lead to dismissal of the government. But if motion of thanks is defeated in Rajya Sabha, well, nothing happens to the government. So first statement is correct, second statement is correct, third statement is false. Had it been Lok Sabha, then third statement would have been correct. So the correct answer would be B. Only two statements are correct. All right. Now question number 2. Consider the following statements regarding JP Morgan Emerging Market Bond Index. Inclusion of Indian government bonds in this index will generate foreign inflows into India. Okay. Only Indian government bonds designated under fully accessible route are index eligible. Okay. Index is expected to get maximum weight of 10%. India is expected to get the maximum weight of 10% in this index. Okay, let's take a look at all three statements. Now, recently, JP Morgan announced that its emerging market index, Global Emerging Market Index, okay, will include Indian government bonds. Now, what is this emerging market index? Well, government bonds from all the emerging economies of the world, from not all, but selected emerging economies of the world, get a mention or are listed in this index. So, in this emerging market index, Chinese government bonds are listed. Okay, Japanese, not Japanese. Japanese is developed country; it's not emerging. But Indonesian government bonds are listed. Okay, Brazilian government bonds are listed. So emerging market bonds are listed. Government bonds, mind you, government bonds are listed in this index. Okay, and a specific weight is also attached to these bonds. Now, until now, Indian government bonds were not listed in this emerging market index. Now, what is the significance of this emerging market index? Well, if your country's bond is listed in this emerging market index, then foreign investors will invest in your country's government bonds. Okay, foreign investors will invest in your country's government bonds, and you will get the much required foreign inflows. Okay, now until now, foreign entities could not invest in Indian government bonds. But in the past couple of years, RBI has allowed certain Indian government bonds to be certain Indian government bonds to raise money from foreign entities as well. Until now, only domestic investors were allowed to invest in Indian government bonds, but RBI has allowed certain categories of Indian government bonds to raise investment from foreign entities as well. Those Indian government bonds are known as bonds with fully accessible route, FAR, which allow foreign investors. Okay, and because of this step of RBI, now Indian government bonds, those Indian government bonds which allow foreign investment, are included in emerging market index, JP Morgan's emerging market index, and because of that, now foreign investors will invest in Indian government bonds as well. Okay, so this will generate foreign inflows. Now, only not all Indian government bonds are eligible to be listed in emerging markets, emerging market index. Only those which are under the category of fully accessible route, which means those which can raise money from foreign entities. Rest of the Indian government bonds only can raise money from domestic entities. Okay, so only those are eligible. Absolutely correct. And India is expecting that the maximum weight that India will get in this index would be 10%. So this statement is also correct. All three statements are correct, and the correct answer would be C. Okay. Question number 3. This is related to MSMEs. Which of the following statements regarding MSME sector is are correct? Samadhan portal is one-stop registration portal for MSMEs. Okay. National Board of MSME is a statutory body that advises government on all matters related to MSMEs. Okay. Yashaswini campaign shall formalize women-owned micro-enterprises. Okay. June 27 is celebrated as International MSME Day. So select the correct option. Which of the 4 statements is are correct? Okay. Now look, Samadhan portal does exist, but the purpose of Samadhan portal is to resolve or to track disputes related to delayed payments to MSMEs. So basically, Samadhan portal just tracks disputes related to delayed payments to MSMEs. Okay, so whenever there is a case of delayed payments to MSMEs, well, then a complaint is filed, and that complaint is tracked on Samadhan portal. It is not a portal for registration for MSMEs. All right. So yeah, statement 1 is false. Okay, it is just Samadhan portal is just related to delayed payments. Now, National Board for MSME is a statutory body that advises government on all matters related to MSMEs. Absolutely correct. It is a statutory body, and what do we mean by a statutory body? A statutory body is that body or that organization which is established by a law of parliament. And National Board of MSME is established by MSME Act 2006. Okay, so it is a statutory body and it advises government on all matters related to MSMEs. That's true. Now, Ministry of MSME has launched Yashaswini campaign. Now, under Yashaswini campaign, well, the aim is to formalize informal, women-owned, only women-owned micro enterprises, not small and medium, only micro enterprises that are women-owned and are informal, will be formalized under Yashaswini campaign. That's true. And June 27th is celebrated every year as International MSME Day. This statement is also correct. So 2, 3, and 4 are correct. The correct answer would be D. All right. And last question, question number 4. Consider the following statements. As per the latest judgments by Karnataka and Bombay High Courts, hijab and niqab are considered essential religious practices for Muslims. Okay. Article 25 of the Indian Constitution provides every citizen the freedom to practice, profess, propagate their religion without any restrictions. Which of the above statements are correct? Now, recently, a college in Maharashtra came out with a dress code. And in that dress code, they banned wearing of hijab and niqab. Now, some of the students who wear hijab and niqab went to the Bombay High Court and asked them to stop this or put a stay on this notification by the college. Now, Bombay High Court actually ruled in favor of the college, and they said that it is valid to ban hijab and niqab. And Bombay High Court said that we are relying on Karnataka High Court's judgment in 2022. When a similar case was in front of the bench of Karnataka High Court, and it also ruled that hijab and niqab can be banned. Okay. Now, people who are fighting this case against the government or the college, they say that hijab and niqab are essential religious practices. And essential religious practices of every religion are protected by the fundamental right mentioned in Article 25, that is freedom of religion. Okay, so if your practice, religious practice, is an essential religious practice as ruled by the court, then that will be protected. But if it's not an essential religious practice, then it won't be protected by Article 25. Now, Karnataka and Bombay High Court said that hijab or niqab are not essential religious practices and therefore they can be restricted. So banning hijab is valid because these are not essential religious practices. So they did not consider hijab or niqab to be essential religious practices, so this statement is false. Now, what is Article 25? Article 25 give every citizen of India the freedom to freely practice, profess and propagate their religion. But reasonable restrictions can be applied on this freedom. Okay, so it is a fundamental right, but it's not without any restrictions. There are reasonable restrictions that can be imposed by the government. So this statement is also false. Neither one nor two are correct. Okay, so the correct answer to this question would be D. And with that, we conclude today's session. Okay, we have covered 4 MCQs. We conclude today's session, which covered MCQs. So which covered MCQs from 28th June's newspaper. Okay, now I'll repeat it again before signing off, that make this lecture series a part of your daily routine. Okay, I'll see you next time with 29th June's newspaper through MCQs. Thank you, everyone.